Dustin Baker, VikesNow. I'm a little late today, sorry, for storylines, but I am here Friday night. You might be watching this Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. But I want to run through all of the storylines for Vikings Bills at Highmark Stadium. There are tons, so I'm going to condense this into the 8 storylines that really play out on the field in terms of operations. What I will do at the beginning, there's 16 storylines in my estimation altogether, 15 or so. So I'm going to run through rapid fires, the personnel ones. I think myself and the rest of the national media, local media has promoted these through most of the week, and these are dudes, like former guys playing against their old teams. For the record, I want to get those out in the open, and then I'll get into the stuff that I will be looking for in terms of in-game importance. So the soap opera-like storylines, the former players and all that are running down the line. I'm not going to give too much analysis because they speak for themselves. Leslie Frazier, the defensive coordinator for the Bills, used to coach the Vikings for 3 seasons. That's happening. These are the 2 0-4 Super Bowl teams. The only teams that are, naughty with these nasty-ass 0-4 records in the Super Bowls playing each other. It doesn't happen very often, once every 4 years. This is Stephon Diggs' first game against his old team. He's playing the Vikings. He used to play for the Vikings. Now he plays for the Bills. Harrison Phillips has a revenge game. The Bills did not prioritize his free agency, and he jaunted to the Vikings. Maybe Case Keenum is quarterback 1. We're going to talk about that in my deeper dive storylines. Dalvin Cook versus his brother James Cook, 2 running backs facing off against one another. And then I don't think either one of these guys will play unless they're elevated, but Xavier Rhodes and Zach Davidson are former Vikings, and they play on the Bills' practice squad right now. There's a small chance they get activated for Sunday. And then, of course, the Jefferson versus Diggs trade fallout. Those are the biggies in terms of guys and the personnel, but I want to spend the next 12, 13, 14 minutes on some of the in-game things that, have deeper context than just guys playing against their old teams. The first one is we want to know. So let me get this out of the way. I think Case Keenum's going to play. I think there's a small chance that Josh Allen does, but I don't know if we're quite like this in the old days of the NFL where, guy doesn't practice all week and then, he, for some crazy way, he's able to play Sunday morning. Yeah, that'll happen in the playoffs and stuff, but I think the Bills will be cautious with Allen. I think they've sounded like that all week. So I think Case Keenum's going to play. And I set that up this way because it's kind of like I want to know if we are firmly done with struggling against backup quarterbacks. This season, the Vikings have seen 3 or 4 if you consider Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater separate dudes from the same team. But generally speaking, the Vikings are 3-0 versus backup quarterbacks. And when you think of backup quarterbacks against the Vikings, you think about some of the naughty parts of the Zimmer era where Andy Dalton twice. Andy Dalton once for the Cowboys, Cooper Rush once for the Cowboys, Matt Moore for the Chiefs, Chase Daniel for the Bears. Those were the scenarios in the last 3 or 4 seasons where the Vikings got beat by backup quarterbacks, and those are bad beats and they resonate in your mind. Well, quietly, the Vikings have already played 3 teams with backup quarterbacks and beat all of them. So I want to know if that continues. Have we put that demon to rest? Has there been an exorcism? Is that no longer a problem? Because if they play Case Keenum and play him like they did in 2019 when he was with Washington, then you shouldn't have much of a problem. You can beat him and somehow topple the injured Bills defense. But basically wanting to know if this brand of Kevin O'Connell Vikings is done playing less than average against backup quarterbacks. I think you'll get to see that this week. Another thing I want to point out, this is number 2, is that the Bills are more than just Josh Allen. The way that the NFL has preferred it, or at least the media has ran with it in the past decade, is we treat this sport like mano-a-mano, quarterbacks versus quarterbacks. And even I think of it when I'm going into a matchup like, last night was Mariota versus P.J. Walker. You just think about those 2 quarterbacks on opposite sides of each other. But football is so much more than that. That's why there's 53 dudes on each team. So these Bills are good in addition to Josh Allen's MVP frontrunner status. I think if you tossed some imbecile like Sam Darnold on the Bills, I think they'd be about 500. I think Josh Allen puts them up to that next level, and hence why they're the Super Bowl frontrunners, even with a 6-2 record. But just know that the Buffalo Bills are more than just Josh Allen's team. per points allowed. They have the league's best defense, and there's not really anything they do bad. And I'll get to one thing they do in a few minutes here, but they're strong all over the field. So even if Case Keenum plays or he gets hurt, and whoever his backup to Case Keenum is, they're designed to be good no matter who's throwing the football. So long as it's a pro-caliber quarterback, they have a pretty solid team. The next one I'll be watching for a storyline is the offensive line of the Vikings. And why do I say that? Because generally, bird's eye view, the Vikings offensive line compared to the last 6, 7, 8 years has been terrific this year. But they had a setback against Washington. It was deceitful how much they let, Cousins get just bashed. And he almost got hurt. He got the wind knocked out of him. But we want to see if the Vikings offensive line against a pretty ferocious pass rush, one that doesn't really blitz, but still gets to the quarterback without blitzing, was that Washington letdown on the offensive line pass protection-wise. Was that a one-game thing? Is Ed Ingram going to get his poop in his group? Is Ezra Cleveland going to fire up another 0.0 PFF grade via pass protection? Let's hope the hell not. Garrett Bradbury is trending to play. There would have been a time in his career where I would have been like, oh, he's not going to play? Good. But no, he's actually played well this year. So how do the Vikings bounce back after a poor offensive line performance against the Commanders? Is it back to being pretty good, or are they just under siege again and Cousins is doing the thing where he's throwing it for dear life in spite of his trenches? Another thing to keep in mind is that this is a big test for the Vikings either way, whether it's Keenum or Allen. Never mind the quarterback situation. They're going on the road. It's going to be cold, probably wet, whether that's rain or snow. This is a good test, whether the Bills are quarterbacked by Keenum or Allen, to say, all right, have we turned the page? Can we trust this team on the road? If they go in and get absolutely creamed by the Josh Allen-led Bills, and it's like 41-10, then it will show, like, no, this team really not quite there. Or if they go in and they lose to Keenum's Bills, 27-17, just things aren't going right, then we're going to take a step back in our enthusiasm for this thing. But if they win, it's the same sentiment. Like, either way, no matter who they would beat, theoretically, you should consider it a feather in your cap. Now, Bills fans and some parts of the media will be like, oh, they beat a hampered Josh Allen, or Josh Allen didn't even play. The Vikings keep getting this easy schedule. Who cares? They're winning football games. The opponents are before them. They can't change that. But if this will be a painful loss if they get destroyed by Allen or simply beat by Keenum, and then if they win against either dude, it's an achievement. Don't get it twisted. Where are we at here? Okay, so wipe the smile off your face on this next one. This, based on how the teams are performing, this is a potential Super Bowl preview. I explained to you guys and gals last Monday how I saw something in the Commanders game when they turned on the Jets and were like, all right, it's the fourth quarter now. Are we really going to lose to Washington? No, we're not. We're going to score. It was a 13 unanswered and get the hell out of here with a dub. That showed me something. If they have that DNA that says it's time, it's go time, we're going to go win the game, that's usually what Super Bowl winning teams do. So based on the mere fact the Vikings are 7-1 in the number 2 seed and the Bills are 6-2, is it still the 2 seed, I believe? This is an honest to goodness possible Super Bowl preview, and we could not have said that about a month ago. So just use that as context. You might be like, oh yeah, these Vikings, they can't beat anybody by more than 8 points. I know, I agree with you. Still, they're 7-1, which grants them access for now to be in the Super Bowl contender conversation. All right, there is only one thing the Bills do poorly. This is my next storyline, and it's turn over the football. There's a lot of giveaways in week 1. You might remember that game against the Rams. It feels like years ago, but they were going back and forth to turnovers. So yeah, it was inflated a little bit by that, but somehow these Bills turn over the ball a lot, especially compared to their Super Bowl frontrunner status. Per Vegas sports books, they are still like the most favored team to win the whole shebang. But they rank 28th in giveaways. That means the 5th most in the NFL. Now, they also take the ball away from the opponent a lot. They rank 3rd there. So it's almost like, going back and forth, giveaways, takeaways. It can be, pretty like a tennis match in that regard. But there's one thing, like I said, that the Bills are bad at, and that is giving the football to the opposition. And that really shouldn't be that way for a team that has these illustrious hopes to get to Arizona in Glendale for a Super Bowl. Let's see. The time of possession, that is the second to last one. Neither team is very good in that regard. The Bills rank 23rd and the Vikings rank 25th. So it can be like a pinball machine where even though each team has a winning record, they don't hang on to it for drives very long. And you couple that with the giveaways and the takeaways from the Bills, and things could get a little dicey. And then finally, the kind of circling back, the mere fact that 7-1 versus 6-2, that means something. And I think that is all of the items. The time of possession one is iffy because that has been one of the Vikings' naughty points, and the Bills are right there with them. But nobody really cares because they have winning records. But in terms of what you're watching for entertainment value, they don't hang on to the ball very long. It's probably because they're in hurry up. But crumple that together with the way that the Bills like to give the ball away, and you might have a fast-paced game. I'll put it that way. All right, I'm not optimistic about this game. I shared that, I think, with Josh Fry on Wednesday. I do think in either situation, whether it's against Keenum or Allen, the Vikings will lose, unfortunately. And so far in my predictions this year, I'm 8-0. And I don't like being potentially right about this one, but I do predict that going on the road, cold game, the positivity's got to end at some point. And I think for one particular game, they're going to lose this one. Either it's Keenum or Allen, and then I think bounce back at home for 3 straight home games. That's all I got. We'll talk Monday about the fallout of this thing. Hopefully, I'm wrong. And that's all I got. Skol, baby.